we'll complete this chapter, which has only about 10 verses, almost this descriptive narrations of the pastimes of the killing of Hiranyaksha. Okay, so we'll start with text 16. Te de tham ahat shatar bhagavan adi sukhara nakam patamanakpapi vrajahata ivadipa. Hit in this manner by the demon of Vidura, the Lord, who had appeared as a first boar, did not feel the least quaking in any part of his body, any more than an elephant would when struck with a wreath of flowers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As previously explained, the demon was originally a servitor of Lord in Vaikuntha, but somehow or other he fell as a demon. His fight with the Supreme Lord was meant for his liberation. The Lord enjoyed the striking on his transcendental body, just like a fully grown-up father fighting with his child. Sometimes the father takes pleasure in having a mock fight with the small child. Similarly, the Lord felt Hiranyaksha's striking on his body to be like flowers offered for worship. In other words, the Lord desired to fight in order to enjoy the transcendental bliss. Therefore, he enjoyed the attack. So incredibly here, we see that the Lord does not see. Even though he's acting as a demon, the Lord is seeing him as his servant. And therefore, he's enjoying the fight. Because in the ultimate end, the Lord sees everyone as being engaged as part of his extensive energy, transformed into so many different leelas, pastimes, personalities, and so on. So it's another way to look at it here, that the Lord is seeing Hiranyaksha no more than his servant. In the same way that Bhishma was fighting with Arjuna and was fighting against the armies of Krishna and Pandava on the battlefield, the identity of Bhishma never changed as of him being the servant of Supreme Lord, situated in the Dasya Bhav, in Dasya Rasa. And even though he was fighting against the Lord. So if we just extrapolate this to see in the larger meaning of this sense of everything is Krishna, nothing is different than Krishna. Everything is an extension of him, whether his energies are of the low-grade inferior energy or the superior energy, it is his energy. And for him, there is really no distinction. But they act distinctly different from one another depending on the quality of the energy. So the material energy will act in a certain way. And demons covered by the material energy will act in a certain way. And devotees act in a different way. And the devotees under the care of the Daivi Shakti will act in a different way. Right? So the intention of the demons is not to serve Krishna, and the intentions of the devotees also to serve Krishna. But if Krishna has arranged that the demon, despite him knowing, is acting as arranged by Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna. So Krishna is kind of understanding this, that this is my... So Prabhupada gives an example of father and child. That example is corroborating this fact too, father and child. Okay, so Hare Krishna. So let's carry on. So text 17. The demon have employed many conjuring tricks against the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yogamaya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. So many conjuring tricks because they were powerful. They had yogic siddhis. Fierce winds began to blow from all directions, spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. Stones came in volleys from every corner as if thrown by machine guns. So Shepanai, the word is Shepanai. And Shepanai means machine gun. Means equipment to throw projectiles. Quite incredible that in the Sanskrit terminology, there's a word for this. So there was hailstorms and rocks and stones being thrown from all sides. So this was all conjuring tricks of yoga siddhi, which under the influence of Maya, the Hiranyaksha was employing and using against the Supreme Lord. So there was fierce winds spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. So all very inauspicious. So this kind of fight are always there. When you see also Dhruva Maharaj fighting the Yakshas, it was the same thing. And sometimes they would rain dead bodies from the sky. They would rain pus and blood and everything, and it becomes impossible. So they have a lot more arsenal. They have a lot more ammunitions in their arsenal to fight than nowadays. The demons nowadays have only one type of weapon, which are fire weapons. They are fire weapons. That's all they have. They are fire weapons. Any other weapons you think they have? No. They don't have water weapons. They don't have wind weapons. They don't have earth weapons. They only have fire weapons that causes explosions. So how limited they are. Modern demons have only fire weapons. They can at most burn everything down. That's the easiest. Even a child can light a match and burn everything down. So that's all they have. So if you think like that, nowadays demons are pretty small demons. They are big in terms that they have no discrimination. The demons in the olden days, they would have some discrimination. Nowadays, they don't have any viveka, any discriminative power. So in the text 18. 19. The luminaries in outer space disappeared due to the skies being overcast with masses of clouds, which were accompanied by lightning and thunder. And there we go. The sky rained pus, air, hair, blood, still urine, and bones. Though these are pretty contaminating objects, materials that is thrown everywhere. So it makes everything becomes inauspicious. Pus, air, hair is considered to be impure, blood, stool, urine, and bones. Right? So to clear something like that is pretty disgusting. When you have an oil spill from a tanker, it becomes very difficult. So for people to clear up and causes big mess. Now, if you have a spill of blood, bone, pus, hair, urine, and that's pretty disgusting. These are all ammunitions in the arsenal of the demons. O sinless Vidura, mountains discharge weapons of various kinds, and naked demonesses armed with tridents appeared with their hair hanging loose. So they were the chief. Born of Ditya and Kashyapa were demons. And they were chief of the demons. So they had a whole army of deities, of demons, who would be ready to fight. When Hiranyakashipu was a demon in his kingdom, he had Holika, who could sit in a fire. When Kamsa was also fighting against Krishna, he had a whole host of demons who were in the same team. Trinavarta was a wind demon.
The Prabhu.
Krishna was a witch, killer of children. So many demons were there. Yes, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. As you were explaining, you were explaining these feats as if they are real. But the text is saying that they are magical feats. So if they are magical feats, are they still real?
The magical feats in that sense that they're produced by magical feats. In that sense, it means yogic things.
So they are real.
Yeah, of course. That's the real fight. Otherwise, they'll be just like normal fight. They're very intense, heavy fight. They appeared by magical feats.
I was thinking that by magical feats, these things were being manifested.
Where did you read that?
I saw it somewhere. Okay, let's be reading now.
It's the same thing again that was repeated when Dhruva was fighting against the Yakshas and Rakshasas. Because the Yakshas and Rakshasas, they are devilish people, they're demonic people. And they use all kinds of unclean means and methods. Right? All kinds of unclean means and methods. Okay. Don't think in terms of what is, you don't use that tendency always to extrapolate what you know of and try to sort of go a little step further and try to understand Lord Krishna's pastimes. No. It's not a function of what we know. It's a function of what it is. And what we are exposed to is only a portion of what is real in the whole material creation. So if we extrapolate from, okay, in this world, we have this kind of weapons, maybe we have a little bit extra. No. What we have is a little bit of the portion of the weapons that they have. The knowledge, the technology that they have for producing these things is way more advanced. So I think I've explained that. So let's carry on with text
20.
Yeah, 19.
20.
19. Yes. O sinless Vidura, mountains discharge weapons of various kinds. And naked, so mountains are controlled by a particular living entity. And the mountains deliver so much. Generally, the mountains are meant to deliver auspicious things like minerals, water. The mountain like a repository of minerals and chemicals and mines and jewels and everything. And it is meant to actually washed by the rivers and the waters that come from the mountains, and then it is supplied and distributed to populations worldwide or in the different river plains and in the different habitations and civilization. The mountains are very important. So, but here the mountains, Gira means mountains. Here the mountains are discharging weapons of various kinds because they're influenced by the demonic forces. And naked demons and demonesses armed with tridents appeared with their hair hanging loose. So very evil, nasty-minded people. And you see that over and over again, no, Prabhu? You see when Lord Ramachandra also, he was taken by Vishwamitra from his father to go and help, assist and remove the obstacles that was called by different demons and the female counterparts who were causing troubles for the different yagyas that the saintly personalities in the forest were organizing, which was the dharma of the age. And then they were doing the same thing. They were making all the different yagya arenas becoming very contaminated by throwing all kinds of unmentionable things in it. So the idea of the demons is to disrupt the lives of the demigods and take control. And the best way they can disrupt the lives and the functions and the services of the demigods by contaminating everything. So then the practicality, for all practical purposes, the performance of yagyas become difficult and improper. Right? So the Lord has to purify everything. Okay, so some of you are not muted, so it creates noise. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so O sinless Vidura, mountains discharge weapons of various kinds and naked demonesses, armed with weapons, tridents appeared with the hair hanging loose. Cruel and savage slogans were uttered by hosts of ruffians, yakshas and rakshasas, who were all either marched on foot or rode on horses, elephants, or chariots. So there was armies and armies of these different categories of evil-minded jivas in evil kind of bodies, and they were all giving a huge fight to this one person called Lord Vishnu in the form of Lord Varaha. So that must have been some scene to see Lord Varaha fight against these hosts and armies of yakshas, rakshasas, demonesses, and mountains throwing things and all kinds of weapons. So it must have been something quite interesting. Even in our imaginations, and the filmmakers cannot make something like that. I mean, they do. Like when you see the Lord of the Rings and all these fightings of mountains walking and chariots, and people have bodies like trees and stones and everything. You think it's imaginary? You think they create these things? Let's discuss this. Do you think they create, the filmmakers create this? If someone asks you this, Chitra, how would you answer?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, they create them. They create them based on historic readings of books which has been there, which they have read. Yeah, books that they have read of such battles that has taken place some in some lifetimes ago or some ancient times ago. But they try to create them with the computer to make it at least look, if not the same, at least look imaginary as it is. So it is not that they created by their own mental concourse, but they have read some stories of things which has past happening, and they based on it to create it, to make it look like
Means
that.
that it exists. Means that it exists.
Yes.
All these things, these trees walking in the Lord of the, what do you call, and different armies of eagles and armies of beasts and armies of, it is actually just like this description here in Srimad Bhagavatam. So how does the cinema, the writers and the screenwriters, they come up with this idea? Is that original? Not originally. They exist. They tap into that energy. They tap into that knowledge. Why? Because they come from different lives, and these perceptions and these ideas and this knowledge are there. Everything is there, and they connect to it. They cannot create anything that doesn't ever exist. Think about this in a more etymological way. No one can create even mentally. No one can create even imaginarily. No one can create even intellectually an idea if that did not exist prior.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will make us creators. And once you accept as a jiva being a creator, then you can extrapolate. But then if it creates one thing, it can create another thing. We are not creators. So once you accept, this is an interesting trap. It's a philosophical trap, that if we think I can create a film, then maybe I can create an object. I can create a painting. I can create something. You can cause a mixture of transformations, but you cannot create anything, because matter is created by consciousness, and the consciousness is controlled as an energy of the Supreme Lord, so Vasudev. So we cannot create. We can tap into that's existing. Even all that, that's why, like I was reading today, an interesting articles, how Bhaskara, Aryabhata, and Sushruta, and so many of our scientist munis, they had created so many theories, the Pythagoras theorem, the law of gravity, and so many things that they have created before. Now, how did they create it? And the scientists try to explain, oh, they had some kind of a, scientific understanding and this and that. No. It means that it was in the Vedas and they tapped into it. Do you follow? It was in the Vedas and they tapped into it. I always remember this one line when Prabhupada was chastising this one devotee, and he asked that, what about the technologies? Prabhupada was angry. And I couldn't understand it. Why Prabhupada was angry when he's saying, what about the technologies we need to follow? Prabhupada said, what technologies? Our technology is a Guru Parampara. And if you hear that statement, how much can you deduce from it? And I thought, what is Prabhupada saying here? Means that knowledge means Vedas. Means that everything there is, everything to be, everything that is, and everything that will be is in the knowledge of it is in the Vedas. And actually people are just using it and making some transformations to it. So very minimal amount of influence that have to be able to do. And that is also only if the Lord allows it. So because the Lord is Upadrushta, he's overseer and Anumanta, and he is the one who allows it. So technically, he is using your arms and your ears to create something, if anything is created at all, but it is not created by you, because he can allow it. So that's another way also looking at it. If you escape from the idea that maybe people do create, people do paint, people do, then it is also because it is permitted by the Lord, because he is, according to chapter 13, text 27 of the Gita, he is a permitter. He's a Upadruta, he's an overseer. So that's a right understanding. Okay, so yes, Salika, what is your question or comment?
Yeah, I think you already touched it somehow, because when Prabhu was asking a question and Chitra was speaking, so I was just reflecting several verses in the Bhagavad Gita, and also importantly, Lord Brahma's creation, because even Lord Brahma could not create without the Lord's giving the ingredients. It wasn't possible for him. So it confirms the statement of Krishna, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, everything animate is coming from me. And in the 7-8 of Bhagavad Gita, where he says that I'm the ability in man. So it kind of resonates now that actually there is actually no, the living entities are not actually creator in any way, because no one actually can create anything, because he is actually making it happen. So that was why
he's a source, all the material and spiritual world, everything emanates from him. 10-8, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. So everything comes from him. So that means the knowledge comes from him.
Exactly.
So then we think, okay, I can follow this technology and that technology. That's foolish idea. I follow the technology of the Guru Parampara. The knowledge is up there. So when you read, especially like I was mentioning, the scientists, Aryabhata, Bhaskara, and Sushruta, and they made surgery possible. I mean, Sushruta created surgical instruments, 100 surgical instruments that they still use today. And that was 2,500 years ago. And Bhaskara and Aryabhata, they determine the force of gravity and the time it takes for the rotation of the earth every day to the millisecond. And he got it right. Because that information is in Surya Siddhanta. It's there in the Vedic literatures. You know? But the foolish scientists are trying, that's why Prabhupada was very heavy about it. Foolish scientists is trying to start from the bottom and look at the atom and try to come to the understanding of the universal creation. That is so stupid. That is so incredibly unintelligent. So we have to understand that these things are there. So,
Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Sorry, my comment. My problem. I used to have the belief that most of these popular scientists, they have knowledge about the Vedas, and that's why they are so special or different from others, and they tap knowledge from this. Then I also believe that what happens in this material world is also a reflection of what is happening in the spiritual world. So most of the technology we have here has been happening in the spiritual world, and somehow, maybe through inspiration, meditations, the idea now comes down. Then some of the scientists or some of us, then we implement it here. It has been things that have been happening. So it's like the world is repeating itself. Even our so-called civilization, it has been like that in this maybe some other ages. So it's like repetition. So nothing new specifically.
Nothing changes very much either. You will see that when we'll discuss Daksha's Yajna, you will see that The way they made the pandals, they had sponsors, they had special guest rooms, and they had this. It's the same thing like we do festivals now. There's nothing changed a lot. But the different ages, something go down, something goes up. But I don't think that scientists understand the Vedas, because the Vedas can only be understood by the Brahmins. So some Brahminical tendencies, maybe there are some ideas they can understand if they are connected to the right source of the Vedas, right? But something they can understand if they link up. We see some parallel. And also it may be that they had studied or they were in some cultures in the last life, and then some of the things can just carry on. So the Lord, I read the text 22, the Lord, the personal enjoyable sacrifices.
Sorry, Prabhu, before we go forward. So then it in response to Madhavan Prabhu's observations, so and your response. So remembering George Harrison, Papa was able to identify. He was such a unique and powerful singer. And Papa was able to relate because he has knowledge of his past life, because he's such a personality. So in other words, could we say that the scientists are also carrying out some of the past experience they have, so it regenerates in this present life, and they're creating all of that thing because they've been some kind of a personality in their previous lives who have had an experience with some of this technology or knowledge. Because when we look at someone like Albert Einstein or some of these recent present scientists, we do not see their connection to the Vedic scriptures, and we know that every knowledge is coming from the Vedas. So could we now say that it is as a result of their previous activities in their previous life carried over that gives them that inspiration and remembrance to be able to start whatever they're doing now?
If Krishna allows it to, because generally everything is lost at the time of birth, material knowledge. But then who is to stop Krishna from letting them have some of the knowledge from the past? So you say, I'm just saying that because my general understanding is when the living entity is born with fruitive results, then everything is lost. Everything that is not related to Krishna consciousness is lost. Material sciences are all lost. If you're a doctor, you're not born a doctor. But then again, like you said, some children are born and they have, they are prodigal children, they have incredible ability for music and all of that. So exactly. Who is to say that is part of the sanskara that is so intense in the personality that it stays? But that is allowed by the Supreme Lord. So because he gives remembrance and he gives ability to forget. So if he allows that, then yeah, possibly that's the only way you can understand that Krishna allows it to carry on from the last life and certain abilities. But they don't remember everything. Something they might remember. Some talents they have are conserved and presented to them again in their mind and intellects in the next life. That's quite possible. Otherwise, how would you explain that without learning so much, a child develops such abilities?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they come from different, or they come from a different age, or they come from a different planet where they had knowledge. Maybe there was some kind of a demigod and they had more knowledge than others have, and so on. I mean, the exact explanation is not in our purview, right? But understanding the science of birth and death and the science of remembrance and forgetfulness, and we can deduce something. Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada. Reading text 22. Even famous, the Lord, the personal enjoyable sacrifices, now discharged his beloved Sudarshan, which was capable of dispelling the magical forces displayed by the demons. Okay, we've read that, isn't it? Oh no. So even famous yogis and demons can sometimes, we have done that section, I think. Even famous yogis and demons can sometimes enact very magical feats by the mystic power. But in the presence of Sudarshan Chakra, when it is let loose by the Lord, all such magical jugglery is dispersed. So Sudarshan Chakra is such a powerful weapon. It's not meant for just cutting the heads off demons and killing them, but it can also clears the environment of all nonsense things that is being presented by the Yaksas and the Rakshasas. So that's one important aspect of Sudarshan Chakra. Because by the powerful energy of the Sudarshan Chakra, everything can be restored back to normal also, as well as killing the demons. So all mystic power get dispelled by the presence of Sudarshan Chakra. Yeah. So that's why sometimes in certain cultures or in Hindu culture, in some Pandits, they do Sudarshan Yajna, purify a home of all kinds of devilish or ghostly contaminations. And you know, the worship of Sudarshan is recommended. And Sudarshan is established on top of temples to wane off all kinds of inauspicious things that might happen to the temple, because it protects, it's a top guardian of the Lord. It protects the Lord from all kinds of different things, that devils and spirits and everything that can throw there. So there is here the description of the quarrel between Durvasha and Ambarish Maharaj. Durvasha Muni wanted to display many magical wonders, but when Sudarshan Chakra appeared, Durvasha himself was afraid and fled to various planets for his personal protection. So Rasavan Prabhu, this understanding is important. That the magical feats and all the different types of rains of nasty materials and excrements and everything is real. But then the possibility of removing all this is done by Sudarshan Chakra. Right? So it's rare. Otherwise, there will be no need for Sudarshan Chakra to come and do this. So Durvasha himself was afraid, and so Durvasha Muni was being chased by the Sudarshan Chakra because he actually wanted to terrorize your Ambarish Maharaj. First, he take a tuft of hair and throw it, and there was this horrible demon came. And the demon wanted to kill Ambarish Maharaj. But then very soon, Lord Sudarshan Chakra came and started kill that demon in one shot, stopped all his magical feat, that he became completely impotent with all his powerful magical and yogic feats. He became impotent and he had to run away with Durvasha Muni. He had to run away with the Chakra Sudarshan running right behind his neck. But when the Sudarshan Chakra appeared, Durvasha Muni was afraid and fled to earth planet. The Lord is described as three-part, which means that he is the enjoyer of three kinds of sacrifices. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord confirms that he is a beneficiary and enjoyer of all sacrifices, penances, and austerities. The Lord is the enjoyer of three kinds of yajna, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. There are sacrifices of goods, sacrifices of meditation, and sacrifices of philosophical speculation. Which is sacrificial of goods is karma, sacrificial of yoga is yoga and meditation, and sacrifice of jnana. So dana jagya tapasa. So dana means you sacrifice objects that you own, you give to the Lord. He's enjoyer of the donations, or you can use him in, you can use opulent things in yajnas. That's called giving objects and using items for the service of the Lord or giving to the Lord, right? It's dana and yajna and tapasya, dana, yajna, tapasa. And what is this also is the sacrifice of meditation, means satkriya, chakra yoga, which is explained in chapter 8, text 10 to 13, that you perform yoga and you offer it a meditation and you offer it to the Supreme Lord. Karma kanda, then yoga, then jnana, philosophical speculation, which means jnana. So these three things you can be offered to the Lord. That's what he is a beneficiary of, these three types of sacrifices. Okay, so those on the path of jnana, yoga, and karma all have to come in the end to the Supreme Lord, Vasudevam Sarvamiti. Right? Whether you're offering karma, jnana, or yoga to the Supreme Lord, ultimately it has to come to Vasudevam Sarvamiti. If you come to the conclusion that the Supreme Lord is everything by dint of our process of sacrifice and offering everything for the enjoyment of the Lord, one maybe has taken to the path of yoga, but he offers everything to the Lord. His meditation, his mind, his dharana, and he meditates on Lord Vishnu. And he develops affection, just like Mother Devahuti did. Mother Devahuti developed intense affection for Lord Vishnu by meditating on his every detailed form, which was instructed to her by Kapiladev. She became purified in devotional bhava, in devotional sentiment. And the Jnani also, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. The Jnani, he can sacrifice everything, all the knowledge and everything that I have, my Lord. You are the source of everything. I understand that now, and I offer everything to you. Such a Jnani devotee is the most dear to the Supreme Lord. Right? Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevam Sarvamiti. That is 1719. And Krishna says that Tesam Jnani Nitya Yukta Eka Bhakti Vishishate. Such a Jnani devotee is the most dear to me. So if we have knowledge and by the knowledge of Krishna Bhakti, by the knowledge of Krishna Katha, by the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, we actually increase our sense of bhakti and devotion to the Lord. Whereas just by the process of yajna, this jnana yajna, by the process of meditation on the jnana and the knowledge, this atmavan, this atma tattva, I am not this body. We can try to actually come to the platform of liberation just by that. Abandoning the aspect that I'm the body, not completely removing the identification of body and everything from our soul, and understand that are situated on transcendence. That is liberation. But no, we have jnana, we have knowledge and all of that, but still we want to supply. We want to bend ourselves, we want to prostrate ourselves in front of the Supreme Lord and beg for knowledge to become his devotee, beg for knowledge to serve him rather than knowledge to liberate ourselves, so that we become more clever, more smart to serve him nicely and better. That is actually offering our jnana to the Supreme Lord. So you should consider that Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is devotional, direct devotional activities, it does sharpen our intellect and our mind to serve the Lord better. And he becomes very happy with that. He's become very happy with that. Because one sense we are offering hearing and chanting, and the purification and the anartha nivritti from Krishna Katha, but at the same time, we become a little bit smart, we become a little bit more clever, and then we use his knowledge to preach and teach and serve him better. Then this is nice. Krishna says this is nice. You can offer that to him. So the Supreme Lord is the ultimate enjoyer of everything. That is the perfection of all sacrifices. Yeah, it's the three things we offer: our time, we offer our knowledge, our intelligence, and we also offer our money. It's the same thing in a way. So text 22, I've and text 23 now. Tadadite sama bhavat sahasariti hepatu smarantya bhartu radesham stana chakshi prashushuve. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiranyaksha. She recalled the words of her husband Kashyapa, and blood flowed from her breast. So she suddenly shuddered because mother is connected to the child, and Hiranyaksha was born of a womb. So suddenly she had a shudder. You get a feeling that something is happening. So let's see what Prabhupada explains in the purport. At Hiranyaksha's last moment, his mother Diti remembered that her husband had said, although her sons would be demons, they would have the advantage of being killed by the Supreme Lord. She remembered this incident by the grace of the Lord, and her breast flowed blood instead of milk. In many instances, we find that when a mother is moved by affection of her sons, milk flows from her breast. In the case of demon's mother, the blood could not transform into milk, but it flowed down her breast as it was. So because of the demons being born, right, The blood is transformed into milk by the mercy of the Lord, by the arrangement of nature, Prakriti. So to drink milk is auspicious, but to drink blood is inauspicious, although they are one and the same thing. Two. Prabhupada is pretty intense, and Prabhupada is saying the formula is applicable to the case of cow's milk also. So the cow's milk is nothing but the cow's blood, but it is transformed into milk. Vinashthasu samayasu bhuyascha vrajjakeshava urusopaguhamanomam dadrisheva stitham vahi. When the demon saw his magic forces dispelled, he once again came into the presence of the personality of Godhead, Keshava, and full of rage tried to embrace him with his arm to crush him. Due to the great amazement, he found the Lord standing outside the circle of his arm. So he went to try to grab the Lord, crush him. The Lord was outside of that. The Lord just jumped out of that, crushing embrace. In this verse, the Lord is addressed as Keshava because he is killed by the demon Keshi in the beginning of creation. Keshava is also the name of Krishna. Krishna is the origin of all incarnations. And it is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that Govinda, the Supreme Lord, the cause of all causes, exists simultaneously in his different incarnations and expansions. The demon's attempt to measure the Supreme Personality of Godhead is significant. The demon wanted to embrace him with his arms, thinking that his limited arms he would capture the absolute by material power. He did not know that God is the greatest of the great and the smallest of the small. No one can capture the Supreme Lord or bring him under his control. So instantly, the Lord Vishnu, he manifests his power of being small, and then you can't capture. If he's like a tiny drop like this, how are you going to capture him with his big, powerful arms? You just can't. In much the same way as you cannot crush, a small ant. So he can become anima, siddhi, become very small, or he can become huge. Also, it's both sides. But so it is said here that the Lord can become the smaller than the smallest or the greater than the greatest. These are all his abilities. But the demonic persons always attempt to measure the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. By his inconceivable potency, the Lord can become the universal form, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and at the same time, he can remain within the box of his devotee as his worshipable deity. So yes, we cannot capture the Lord. He can become like the universal form, but the Lord can also accept to become a small shalagram or small Govardhan Shila or a small deity, and you can put it in a small box and you put it in your bag and you carry him wherever you want. So that's a very nice way Krishna is presenting that. He said that the Lord, he can also become a small item and he can be carried in a box. He can remain with his devotees in any suitable form. And he is approachable by any amount of demoniac activities. So the Lord, he reserves the right to appear in the manner, in the way that his devotees want him to appear. That he has that special ability. There's a particular verse we will study later on in respect to that. That the Lord's mercy is such that he will appear in the particular form that his devotees are attracted to. He gives that facility. So text 25, Tanmushtibhi vinignantam brajra rashare radokshaja karena karanamulehan yatha tashtam marutpati. The demon now began to strike the Lord with his hard fist, but Lord Adokshaja slapped him in the root of the ear. Even as into the Lord of the Maruts hit the demon Vrita. So it's coming to the end. Because Diti had the feeling that, okay, this big fight is going on, he's going to be killed. Kashyapa said, the Lord is going to kill my children, my two sons. So the Lord began to strike him hard. So they had a fist fight. Okay? And finally, he said that the Lord Adokshaja. What is the meaning of Adokshaja?
It means transcendental, beyond material. Yes.
Yeah, it also means
So,
that one who cannot be understood by material senses. One cannot
yeah.
be understood by material senses. So it's more like that. So then he said, but Lord Adoksha just slapped him in the root of the ear. So I slapped him here, the root of the ear, even as Indra, the Lord of the Maruts. So now immediately, you see how the acharyas speak, they write. And now he mentions Indra, even as Indra, the Lord of the Maruts, hit the demon Vritta. Why Indra? Because the Lord is Indrari, Vyakulam Lokam. The Lord is the enemy of the enemies of Indra, because the Lord comes to establish the principle of helping Indra manage the universal affairs. So one of the way that Lord is described in Paribhasa Sutra in 1328 is, it says that Ete cha amsaklaha pumsas Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Ridyanti Yuge Yuge. Again and again, millennium after millennium, he comes to vanquish and kill Indra Ari. Ari means enemies. So he comes here. So Indra is mentioned now as because he's a final stage. So Sa'ahatu Vishwajita Hyavagyana Parim Brahmadhatra Udhashtalochanaha Vishrina Bhavangri Suroruha Pathat Yatha Nagendro Lito Nabhasvata. Although struck indifferently by the Lord, the conqueror of all, the demon's body, began to wheel. His eyeballs bulged out of his sockets. So those struck indifferently by the Lord means like just like casually, or indifferently means also casually hit by the Lord. He didn't like decide, I'm just going to hit you and that's going to be my final blow. He just hit indifferently. The conqueror of all, the Lord, the demon's body began to wheel. The eyeballs bulged out of his sockets, his arm and legs broken, and the hair on his head scattered. He fell down dead, like a gigantic tree uprooted by the wind. So just a small slap behind the ear, he was done. So Prabhupada mentions the same point. It does not take even a moment for the Lord to kill any powerful demon, included Hiranyaksha. So he hit him indifferently. Nothing special. The Lord could have killed him long before. Again, nothing special. Lord could have killed him for him. He allowed the demon, but he allowed the demon to display the full extent of his magical feats. One may know that by magical feats, by scientific advancement of knowledge, or by material power, one cannot become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His one signal is sufficient to destroy all your attempts. So all that you can bring by your power and your magic and your display of Krishna can destroy it. So his inconceivable powers displayed here is one strong that is so strong that the demon, despite all his demonic maneuvers, was killed by the Lord when the Lord desired, simply by one slap. Right? That's very humiliating, right? Okay. So Shito Sayanotam Akunta Varchasam Karaladam Strang Paridhashta Dhatacham Ajadhuyo Vikshasam Sasuragata Aho Imam Ko Nulabena Samstitim. Ajo, Brahma and others arrived on the spot to see the fearfully tusked demon lying on the ground, biting his lip. The glow of his faith was yet unfaded, and Brahma admiringly said, "Oh, who could meet such blessed death?" So Lord Brahma is looking at the blessings of the demon, not his nasty nature. The blessing that he's seeing is because the glow in his face, yet unfaded, that he's not completely dead. or he's dying, because he's biting his lips. So that means that he's not completely dead, but he is now going to die. So he said, how can you be so fortunate to meet such a glorious death? Because you're killed by the Supreme Lord. So although the demon was dead, now his body lusted and faded. These are very peculiar, because when a man or animal is dead, the body immediately becomes pale, the luster gradually fades, and decomposition takes place. But here, although Hiranyaksha was laid dead, his bodily luster was unfaded, because the Lord, the Supreme Spirit, was touching his body. One's bodily luster remains fresh only as long as the spirit soul is present. So even though he was dying, the spirit soul was still present. Although the demon soul had departed his body, the Supreme Spirit touched the body. Okay, so yeah, in this case, it's slightly different. That the Hiranyaksha's soul had left, but because it was being touched by the Supreme Lord, right? He still had the glow. The individual soul is different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who sees a Supreme Personality of Godhead when he keeps his body is certainly very fortunate, and therefore personalities like Brahma and other demigods eulogized the death of the demon. Text 28. Yam yogino yoga samadhina raho dhyayanti singada sato mumukshaya tasyasya daitya rishabhapadahato mukham prapasyam dhanum utsasarjaha. Brahma continued, he was struck by a 4 foot of the Lord, whom yogis seeking freedom from their unreal material bodies meditate upon in seclusion in mystic trance. While gazing on his countenance, his crest jewel of deity's sons had cast off his mortal coil. So here it says he was struck by the 4 foot of the Lord. So I think the slap was with a hand, or the slap was with like you kick a football. Sarika, what do you think it is? Trying to wake you up. So he was struck by the 4 foot of the Lord, whom yogis seeking freedom from the unreal material bodies meditate upon in seclusion in mystic trance. So yes, he was slapped in the back of the ear, but how was he slapped?
No idea.
But what does it say? Brahma continued, he was struck by a 4 foot of the Lord, whom yogis seeking freedom from their unreal material bodies meditate upon in seclusion in mystic trance. So Brahmaji this is interesting. This is what is nice. And if we can dive into these small details, it engages our silly minds, which generally goes into all kinds of, YouTube and TikTok. But this is interesting, YouTube and TikTok here. So there it says he got slapped in the back of the ear. So I will assume that you got slapped in the back of the ear with what? With your hand. Right? But what Brahma is saying, you get slapped by the 4 foot means like when you play football, you use the 4 foot to slap a ball, right? You hit a ball with the 4 foot. And generally, if you're a good spinner, you can actually send the ball really spinning far away and you can score a goal, because just like this of the 4 foot, like the front of the foot. But here Brahma said he was struck by a 4 foot of the Lord. So that slap, which was at the back of the ear, he was slapped, like a UFC fighter would slap you from his foot on the neck. So was he slapped by the hand or was he slapped by the 4 foot of the Lord?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare
It's an
Krishna.
interesting narration.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, go on.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
How I could imagine it is that you know, the Vishnu we are talking about is a boa. It's in form of a boa. And he has 4 legs. So he can use one of the legs to kick, you know, or that was the leg used to make the slap at the lower end of the air.
Right. So it's like very good answer. Because the Lord Vishnu, he's using 4 legs to fight. So the slap, which may be from the front foot, which is equal to like the arm, but it isn't an arm, it's a leg. And therefore he got hit by the 4th foot of the Lord because the Lord has 4 legs. So you can imagine the Lord to be Vishnu, which means that when he says that he got slapped, so the slap is from the hand of Lord Vishnu, but because Lord Vishnu is in the form of a bow, he gets kicked by the leg. That's nice, eh? So you see, it's like when you read through carefully, you can see these things, right? So yeah, so he was struck by 4 feet of the Lord.
Yeah. Yes, and to get the more I understand, you see that the Lord is in the form of a boa with four legs, let's say, that some are acting related the hands, but it is not possible for ordinary animals to use their four legs to slap. But when you read the Brahma Samhita, it said that the Lord, his body, any part of it can perform any function, right? So even with the four foot, he can use it to slap in a way that it will look very well like a slap actually. So that is my also understanding. Even though he's in the form of he's using the 4 foot as usual, but it's not easy or practical for animal like a goat to use a forefront to slap in the form of a slap, but you can use it to kick. But Brahma is describing it as a slap. It's a slap, and actually as a slap because the Lord can do that.
Yeah, in the other verse it was described as a slap. Here it is described he was struck by the 4 foot. 4 foot. 4 foot. The 4 foot of the Lord means the foot in the front, not the back foot, but the 4 foot. So he was struck by the front foot. Now also you can analyze that. Was it means that the front of one of the legs, or the, you know, you can speculate, but the acharyas will give commentaries on this, and they will go on, and they will analyze the Sanskrit, and this is how they come up with interesting comments, because they are special. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Sridhar Maharaj or, you know, Sridhar Swami, they'll comment on these things, like, you know, how did he get killed? You know, it's interesting. That's why we should not neglect reading these things carefully. And we still haven't really found an answer, have we? Was it the front of the 4 foot? Was it the back of the 4 foot? Or was it he was kicking it with the front leg as an arm? What was it? Because it's too confusing. Never mind, but it's interesting. That's why I understand the Lord's pastime is always very difficult. That's why it is revealed to those who are very special personalities. The process of yoga is very clearly described in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said here that the ultimate end of the yogis and mystics who perform meditation is to get rid of this material body. Therefore, they meditate in secluded places to attain yogic trance. Yoga has to be performed in a secluded place, not in public or demonstration on stage, as practiced by so-called yogis. Real yoga aims at reading one of the material body. Yoga practice is not intended to keep the body fit and young. Such advertisements of so-called yoga are not approved by any standard method. Particularly mentioned in this verse is the word yam unknown to him, indicating that meditation should be targeted on the personality of Godhead. Even if one concentrates his mind on the boar of the Lord, on the boar form of the Lord, that is also yoga. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, one who concentrates his mind constantly in meditation upon the personality of God is one of his many varieties of forms. He is a first-class yogi, and he can easily attain trance simply by meditating upon the form of the Lord. If one is able to contribute such meditation on the Lord's forms at the time of one's death, one is liberated from this mortal body and is transferred to the kingdom of God. This opportunity was given to the demon by the Lord, and therefore Brahma and other demigods were astonished. So he was kicked by the foot of the Lord. In other words, the perfection of yoga practice can be attained by the demon if he is simply kicked by the Lord. The two personal assistants of the Supreme Lord, having been cursed, have been destined to take birth in demonic families. After a few such births, they will return to their own positions. So this is Lord Brahma speaking. He spoke the verse 28 and the 29. And now, Deva Uchuhu, now the demigods speak. These are 4 verses left here. Okay, Deva Uchuhu. Namo namaste khila gyatattave stito grihitamalas sattamurtaye drishtya hato yang jagatam arundudas tatpada bhaktya vayamisha nibrita. The demigods address the Lord, all obeisances unto you. You are the enjoyer of all the sacrifices, and you have assumed the form of a boy in pure goodness for the purpose of attaining the world. Unfortunately for us, this demon who was a torment to the world has been slain by you, and we too, O Lord, are now at ease in devotion to your lotus feet. So the Devatas always cooperate with the Supreme Lord to manage the universal affairs. There were some disturbances that was caused, lots of torments in the world, and their heavenly duties and their environmental control duties were disrupted. Now they're happy that the Lord has slain him, and now they can at ease perform their service to the Lord by managing the universal affairs of the planets. So now anyone can read that text for me, text 30.
I can read.
Okay.
Text 31.
Or the purport of text 30.
Purport of text 30. Okay. The material world consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. But the spiritual world is pure goodness. It is said here that the form of the Lord is pure goodness, which means that it is not material. In the material world, there is no pure goodness. In the Bhagavatam, the stage of pure goodness is called Sattvam Visuddham. Visuddham means pure. In pure goodness, there is no contamination by the 2 inferior qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Therefore, the form of the Boa, in which the Lord appeared, is nothing of the material world. There are many other forms of the Lord, but none of them belongs to the material qualities. Such forms are not different from the Vishnu form, and Vishnu is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. The sacrifices which are recommended in the Vedas are meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In ignorance only, people try to satisfy many other agents. But the real purpose of life is to satisfy the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. All sacrifices are meant to please the Supreme Lord. The living entities who knows this perfectly well are called demigods. Godly or almost God. Since the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, it is his duty to serve the Lord and please him. The demigods are all attached to the personality of Godhead, and for their pleasure, the demon, who was a source of trouble to the world, was killed. Purified life is meant to please the Lord, and all sacrifices performed in purified life are called Krishna consciousness. This Krishna consciousness is developed by devotional service, as clearly mentioned here. Hare Krishna.
The one thing is, the first part of the purport is understanding Sattvam Vishuddham. Okay, in Bhagavatam, this pure goodness is called Vishuddha Sattva. Vishuddham, Shuddham means Sattva, goodness, but Vishuddha Sattva is pure goodness. So pure goodness is not Sattva Gun in its unadulterated form, no. Because modes of material nature, they can never be by themselves. There's never a question of someone being in pure mode of ignorance or pure mode of goodness or pure mode of passion. The nature of the modes of material nature is always mixed with other modes. Sattva gun is always mixed with passion, and passion is always mixed with sattva, and sattva is always mixed with tamas and tasal. So even though someone can be sthite sattam prasiddhati means is primary, means that sattva gun is more prevalent in someone when by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, but on and off, sometimes we can actually be attacked by the modes of ignorance and passion. So because of the nature of these gunas, they're always working together as a trio. And when we are primarily in the mode of goodness, right? But it's still some point we will fall a little bit asleep because we are tired. That's the mode of lethargy and tamogun. So it's not possible to have that. So therefore, we cannot just say we extract the goodness out of it, and when the goodness out of the free modes of nature in its pure state is transcendental. No, that's a different thing. Please understand that. So sattva, Shuddha Sattva and Vishuddha Sattva is transcendental. Is transcendental. But most of the time I see that the demigods, they always explain this as being you're completely in this state of pure goodness. Because they are not in the state of pure goodness. The demigods are supposed to be in the mode of goodness. They have knowledge. They perform a very high level of activities. But they're never in the state of pure goodness because they always have desires. So therefore, they are mostly engaged in karma mishra bhakti. They engage in devotion and they want something for themselves. So they engage in fruitive activities and engage in the service of the Lord according to proper rules and regulations because they're guardians of rules and regulations. So therefore they know. But because of the particular Prabhupada is explaining here that the demigods, they want something for themselves, because they know and therefore they want something in the material world. So the Lord, the demigods are not completely pure. But when they say that about the Lord, they often means that the Lord is completely pure, unlike us. But the Lord is more than pure, he's always transcendental. Okay, and that is called Vishuddham. Vishuddha Sattva, Vasudeva Shabditam. They're completely transcendental. So you understand the difference, right? It is not Vishuddha Sattva, is not Sattva Gun in its pure state. Vishuddha Sattva means transcendental, beyond the free modes of nature. So Maitreya now is concluding this section with 2 verses. Okay? And let us see what he's saying. Maitreya Vacha Evam Hiranyaksham Asaya Vikramam Sasadhitva Hariradi Shukhara Jagamalokam Sammakhanditotsavam Samedita Pushkara Vishtaradadivi. Sri Maitreya continued, after thus killing the most formidable demon Hiranyaksha, the Supreme Lord Hari, the origin of the boar species, turned to his abode where there is always an uninterrupted festival. So here it is said that after he killed the demon Hiranyaksha, right, he returned to his own abode where there is always uninterrupted festivals. The spiritual world is full of festivals. And it is when it's stated here, and Maitreya is saying that the Lord was praised by all the demigods headed by Brahma. Okay, someone may read the purport for me, 31.
The Lord is spoken of herewith as the origin of the Gua species. As stated in Vedanta Sutra 112, the absolute truth is the origin of everything. Therefore, it is to be understood that all 4.8 million species of bodily forms originated from the Lord, who is always Adi, or the beginning. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna addressed the Lord as Adhyam, or the original. Similarly, the Brahma Samhita, in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord is addressed as Adi Purusham, the original person. Indeed, in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself declares, Mata Savam Prabhatate, from me everything proceeds. That's Bhagavad Gita 10:8. In this situation, the Lord assumed the shape of a boa to kill the demon Rayaksha and pick up the earth from the Gaba ocean. Thus, it became Adi Sukara, the original boa. In the material world, a boa or a pig is considered most abominable, but the Adi Sukara, the supreme personality of Godhead, was not treated as an ordinary boa. Even Lord Brahma and other demigods praised the Lord's form as a boa. This verse confirms the statement in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord appears as he is from his transcendental abode for the sake of killing the miscreants and saving the devotees. By killing the demon Hirayaksha, he fulfilled his promise to kill the demons and always protect the demigods headed by Brahma. The statement that the Lord returned to his own abode indicates that he has his own particular transcendental residence. Since he is full of all energies, he is all pervasive in spite of his residing in Goloka Vrindavan, just as the sun, although situated in a particular place within the universe, is present by sunshine throughout the universe. Although the Lord has his particular abode in which to reside, is all pervasive. The impersonalists accept one aspect of the Lord's features, the all-pervasive aspect. But that cannot understand they cannot understand his localized situation in his transcendental abode, where he always engages in full transcendental pastimes. Especially mentioned in this verse is the word Akanditu Savam. To Sava means pleasure. Whenever some functions take place to express happiness, it is called Utsava. Utsava, the expression of complete happiness, is always present in the Vaikuntha Lokas, the abode of the Lord, who is worshipable even by demigods like Brahma, to say nothing of other less important entities, such as human beings. The Lord descends from his abode to this world, and therefore is called Avatar, which means one who descends. Sometimes Avatar is understood to refer to an incarnation who assumes the material form of flesh and bone, but actually Avatar refers to one who descends from higher regions. The Lord's abode is situated far above this material sky, and it descends from that higher position. Thus is called Avatar. Hare Krishna.
So one point is Prabhupada talks about this meaning of avatar also in the pastimes of Lord Nrsingadev in the same way. Because the point to remember is that the Lord appears as a boy incarnation. But he appeared as a boy incarnation, and it looks like one of the specific incarnations for a specific purpose. It's the same is described in the case of Hiranyakashipu being killed by Lord Nrsingadev. It's very specific avatar in a specific purpose. What does that mean? That that incarnation just appeared out of the blue and it never existed before? point of discussion and reflection. What do you think? Salika, what do you think? That the Lord existed? What does that mean here? Rasavan, what do you think?
Prabhuji, I'm thinking, since the Lord is capable of everything, though he may take a form for a particular purpose, but my question now is, after he wound up that affair, I'm struggling between the thinking of whether he winds up the form he has taken for that particular purpose, or he keeps it also eternally. So that has been my problem.
Yeah, but Prabhupada, that's why I'm saying the last purport, if you heard carefully, Prabhupada said the Lord descends from his abode to this world, and therefore it's called. So when we say the very word avatar means what?
The one who descends.
Yeah, one who descends. So how can you, if you're not on the first floor, how can you descend to the ground floor?
Impossible.
Right. Right. So one who descends. Avatar doesn't mean incarnation. Avatar means one who descends. So therefore, when the Lord descends in the form of Nrsingadev to accomplish a very specific purpose of keeping the bones of Lord Brahma, we can easily conclude that, oh, this is the first time he came, because that was very specific to fulfill the boons of Lord Brahma and at the same time kill the demon. So therefore he couldn't have existed before. Sorry, no. The Lord descends, so he was existing as Nrsingadev before. And now we see the specific incarnations of the boar, incarnation of the demon, to kill the demon Hiranyaksha. He appeared also because he had to go down to the muddy floors of the Garbhodak Ocean and pick up the earth planet, which was in Svetavaraha. We can make the mistake of saying that he did that also now, because the acharyas have combined the two pastimes. So that was required because he appeared then. But the very clear and definite meaning of avatar means one who comes down. And if you read the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, one describes the Lord's incarnation in chapter 4, text 8. There's a long purport, and I think we've read that. You may have forgotten, but we've read that. And in that long purport, Prabhupada says, he describes Shristi Hetu Se Prapancha Avatari. Se Ishwara Murti Avatara Namadhare Mayati Tapara Vyome Savaravasthan Vishwa Avatari Dhari Avatara Nam. And it's in the Bhagavad Gita. We get that for you. Okay, here, text 8, which says the Lord appears to protect his devotees, and in the purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Krishna, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and text chapter 4, text 8. And in the middle of the purport, it says, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, the verses 20, chapter 20, Madhya Lila, 263 and 64, summarizes 3 principles of incarnation. And it says, see, there it is. Yeah, Shrishti Hetu, Ye Murti Prapancha Avatare, Se Ishwara Murti Avatara Namadhare, Mayati Tapara Vyome Savaravasthan, Vishwa Avatari Dhari Avatara Nam. So in the translation, Prabhupada is saying, the avatar or incarnation of Godhead descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. And the particular form of the personality of Godhead whose source is descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. So avatar means they descend. Okay, so that is the real meaning of the word avatar. So there are various kinds of avatar, such as Purusha, Guna, Lila, Sakti, Manvantara, and Yuga avatar, all appearing on schedule all over the world. But the Lord Krishna is a primeval Lord, the fountainhead of all avatars. So Lord Sri Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the devotees who are very anxious to see him in the original Vrindavan pastime. Therefore, the prime purpose of Krishna avatar is to satisfy the unalloyed devotees. So Now, is still, does that answer our specific question, or it doesn't? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Because the source.
Really.
Huh?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Not really.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay.
Please,
Vaibhava, go first.
Okay, thank you. If you look at this particular text, the way it defines the avatar, then it differentiates between avatar and incarnation. It explains that avatar is the Supreme Lord that descends from the higher, from Vaikuntha. But he now said the incarnation is someone who assumes a material form of flesh and bone. So it appears as if the incarnation applies to only the jivas, because a jiva can incarnate, like in the Bible, when we have John the Baptist, who came also, who was originally was, who can remind me? John the Baptist, it was an incarnation of Elijah, right? So from this text, it's like you try to differentiate between what is an avatar and then what it is an incarnation.
Yeah, Prabhu, before you answer that question,
I didn't really understand. Your explanation was not very clear. But anyway, maybe Salika, you can explain and you can add your points.
Okay. What Prabhu is trying to portray here is that the word avatara and incarnation, from Prabhupada's explanation, looks to be different in meaning. Is that what you are saying, Prabhu?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So that's what Prabhu is saying. But then, I've also had a lecture where it is said that incarnation means to enter into flesh. And the word avatara is directly translated as incarnation. So Prabhu's understanding that incarnation may be only limited based on that understanding to the living entity. I don't think the living Jiva Atmas. I don't think I abide that notion.
Ideas.
Yeah, ideas. So I don't think I buy that. But my understanding is that incarnation cannot be attributed to the Jiva Atma because it's of a different category. When we say incarnation, entering into flesh, the living entity also reincarnation.
Yeah, but the Supreme Lord, the avatar and the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, the human being incarnates, reincarnate. It's not incarnate, it's reincarnate. Because he is already into flesh, he goes out of flesh and he comes back into flesh. The Lord is incarnate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shiva is not incarnating, he's reincarnating. He's already into flesh. He is in modes of material nature and he is coming back into flesh again after coming out of flesh of one body and goes into flesh of another body. But the Lord incarnates. That question is slightly different. The question is, does the form of the Lord eternally exist? But then all the forms of the Lord are eternal.
Yeah, so that is the point I wanted to come. That was my own original question I wanted to ask, because if we look at the purport of the text we're treating, Prabhupada explained that he uses the word adisukara in that second paragraph of the purport. Prabhupada said that thus became, let me start from the beginning of the purport. He said, in this situation, the Lord assumed the shape of a boa to kill the demon Irayaksha and pick up the earth from the Gabra ocean. Thus, it became Adi Sukara, the original boa. That is a very question I wanted to ask. So it means that in the spiritual world, there is already a boa form existing That is what this property is trying to explain to us. That in the spiritual world, there's already a Bua form that is existing, but
it's still not clear.
Yes, so it's not clear because the Lord assumed a particular form, just like Nisimade form. It's an eternal form, but then it appears from the narration of the story that that form was specifically manifested.
Because you see, yeah, it's still not explaining. We are going in a circular argument here.
Exactly, it's not explained. So please,
it's not explaining it because it's just making another circular argument into the circular argument, and the two is like a Venn diagram. So now my point is this: if I'm trying to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is now let's read 263 and 264. Now I read 263. Shristi Hetu is the form of the Lord, right? Okay, let me read a little bit ahead. 261. He said, dull matter alone cannot create anything. The 261. The material, just listen. We don't have to, just listen carefully. The material energy produces the creation by the power of Supreme Lord. Iron itself has no power to burn, but when the iron is placed in fire, it is empowered to burn. Balaram and Krishna are the original, efficient, and material causes of all material world. Mahavishnu and the material energy. They enter into the material elements and create the diversities of material energies. Thus, they are the cause of all causes. And in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:46-31, right, this verse is explained. Now here, text 263, which we understood, Shristi Hetu Ye Murti Prapancha Avatare, Se Ishvara Murti Avatara Namatare, Mayati Taparavya Mesavara Avasthan, Vishwa Avatari Dhari Avataranam. The form of the Lord has descended into material world to create is called an avatar or incarnation. The form of the Lord that descends into the material world to create is called an avatar or incarnation. Now 264. Mayatita Paravyame Savara Avasthan, Vishwa Avatari Dhari Avataranam. All the expansions of the Lord Krishna are actually residents of the spiritual world. All the expansions of Lord Krishna are actually residents of the spiritual world. When they descend into the material world, they are called incarnations or avatars. So if you read the clear understanding here, all the expansions of Lord Krishna are actually residents of the spiritual. So does the Lord very carefully, Lord Chaitanya very carefully wants to point out here, Krishna Viraj, that the expansions are actually residents in the spiritual world, but they descend. So therefore, can we conclude that in the Bo form, all is still not convincing? There's that the Lord exists as a Supreme Lord, but he can transform into a form and comes down. Because he is one self-same form, he's the one and the same. We can say that the Lord Krishna as the origin of incarnation is the origin of Lord Bo, but that it is manifest here. It's still it's not clear that the eternal form of Lord Bo is still there. So let me read to glance over the material energy and power. No, it doesn't say. I still have that confusion.
Yeah, I'm also. And when we go down that same chapter, it goes further to explain how the material manifestation manifests, but
doesn't explain anymore.
Yeah. Could we now say
just inquire, read through. I have to go also. Read through. Let's complete this next 8 verses tomorrow morning. Let's be on time. Let's be on time and give it a good thought. And I mean, I have been thinking about this for a long time. But there must be some tattva to explain it. Because the Lord can incarnate anytime he wants in any way. And there's no limitation to his incarnations. right? And there are as many incarnations as there are waves in the ocean. So then how do you?
So when we say the Lord is unlimited, is because that is why it's Krishna. He is unlimitedly unlimited, and his manifestations are limitless. So they kept on manifesting at different times. And that is why even Ananta Shesha cannot calculate. So it continues manifesting. So when it says
it means that it could be new.
It could be new manifestation beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Tattva Sandarbha probably explains it all.
Yeah. Maybe when I'll read through that chapter down.
Yeah.
That chapter 20 of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It gives a whole lot of, maybe one carefully reads the purport. So
I have read, there's not much. I read it 2-3 times, but I always go with the explanation that all the forms are permanently existing.
Yeah.
It's actually, I'm thinking about it, it's Achinta Veda Veda Tattva.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the day, that is what could explain
Achinta Veda Veda, because if it is not there as an opulence, if it is not there as the opulence in the beginning, then the Lord is not complete. And things come to complete it.
Yes.
If the boy incarnation is not in the nature of the Lord, and if the incarnation of Lord Nrsimhadev is not in the Swabhava, in the very nature of the Lord in the beginning, but it comes in the end, that means in the beginning the Lord was not complete.
That's a very good explanation.
Right.
So
just like we say that the Lord is
it's not manifested. It has never manifested.
Right. The Lord is present with all his energies, but does the energy come into being afterwards? That means that he was not with all his energies in the beginning. That means in the beginning he was not complete. That will defeat the verse Om Purnamada Purnamidam.
So it means that
it's actually Achinta Veda Veda Tattva. He was there,
but he was not manifested.
But he was not manifested, but now becomes manifested. That's a better explanation.
I think.
And that goes with Yatha. That goes with the verse Ritem Ta Pratyeta, the second verse of Chatushloki. Na Pratyeta Chatmani. I do enter, but I do not enter. Right? And then like that. So I think everything is in the Chatushloki. And Chatushloki is very much Achinta Veda Veda Tattva. So we can reconcile it with Achinta Veda Veda Tattva for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It's very beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Keep on reading and be on time, and we can make a team to study Bhagavatam together like that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So let's loudly shout Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to appreciate that.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinde ki jai.